Sanbona. Before we start, I'd like to mention that I invited the CEO of Standard Bank, Mr. Sim Shabalala, to be part of the public conversation. In turn, he unleashed the director of the biggest law firm in Africa to threaten me. So I know that they're listening and they're part of the conversation. They're welcome to step in whenever suitable. The fraud. I went to a dealership, I chose a car, they gave me the price, I paid cash for the car. They told me to come 2 days later as they needed to service, register, all of that. And when I went to collect the car, I was sat down and I was told that they decided to send the international payment back for whatever reasons they explained. And their suggestion was that we use local banks to finance the car. But because I'm not domiciled in South Africa, I had to use my foundation as the buyer and then sign as surety. So this was okay. I did that. And a day later, I got an email that Standard Bank has approved the loan. 15th April 2015, I went to collect the car. I signed all the legal documents, the installment sale agreement, the contract, and the insurance papers. At the end of the month, when they deducted, they took double the agreed, well, nearly double the agreed installment. So I called Standard Bank and I said, there's a mistake. You have taken nearly double what we agreed upon. And they said, who are you? We don't know you. I said, oh, the car is registered in my foundation. And they said, no, this is not registered in your foundation's name, and neither is it registered in your name. We don't know you. The following month, they took nearly double the installment again. I went to Standard Bank. I spoke. I tried everything I could. They were just not listening to me. The third month, they took the double installment again. So I wrote a letter of demand. I said I demand to see the installment sale agreement that I signed because it has the correct installment in it. Secondly, I'm going to stop paying until you tell me who my car is registered to and until I see the installment sale agreement that I signed. So what I did, I went to the bank, I stopped the payment, I opened a separate escrow account, and I deposited the wrong installment that they were depositing, the double installment. I deposited that into the new account every month so that whatever they do, they cannot accuse me of not having the installment. So I made sure that every month I deposit that installment, and I just sat back. I went to Rosebank Police Station. I got them to sign the odometer of the car, give me an affidavit, and park the car. So I stopped using the car, I stopped paying, I bought a new car, and I waited for Standard Bank to come back. About 3 months later, they wrote a letter, but the letter was registered to my daughter. And in this letter, they were saying, you haven't paid your installments in 3 months. So we went to Standard Bank and we said, there's obviously a mistake. I don't know where my daughter fits in, but the car was bought by my foundation, which is the account that you were deducting from. And secondly, I signed as surety. My daughter comes from school. She's a student. She's never worked. I don't see how the bank could have financed a car worth millions to a child. That's where the fight started. Standard Bank then decided to go to court to go and fight for the return of the car. Standard Bank did not disappoint. They rushed to court to apply to repossess my car. In their particulars of claim, they had to attach the installment sale agreement that I had been begging for months. And 8-9 months after the purchase of the car, for the first time, I saw a copy of the installment sale agreement. And to my shock, it was a completely different document. This one came from a dealership I have never dealt with. The contracting party was changed. The address did not exist. The employer did not exist. The engine number was changed. The chassis number was changed. The year of manufacturing for the car was made younger by 3 years. The price was highly inflated. The signature was forged. So this was so obvious that it didn't even worry me. I just thought Standard Bank is a juristic person. I'm not going to point fingers. I'll do the responsible thing. I'll go to Standard Bank. I will show them what the problem has been all along, and then we can sort it out. When I got to Standard Bank, they looked me in the eye and they said, this document is exactly the document that we approved your installment sale agreement on. It's the correct document. There's nothing wrong with it. They refused to listen to me. So I said, okay, then we go to court. They applied for default judgment. I defended the action. We got a date, got to court. We were on the roll. We waited all day to be called. Every case was called except us. Little did we know that Standard Bank, behind my back, went to some acting judge in the chambers and got the default judgment approved behind my back. So I went home thinking my case is not called, and a few days later, I was going for a run in the morning. And when I stepped out of the yard, the street was just chock-a-block. It was these cars that pull other cars. They had 2 of them. They had police, and there were just a number of people in the street and a sheriff. So as I stepped out of the yard, they stopped me and they asked me if I live in the yard, and I said yes, and they said, oh, they're here to collect a car. And I said to them, on what basis? We went to court and there was nobody, our case was not called. And they showed me a default judgment for the day, and they showed me a writ of execution that has been approved. All of this was getting more strange. So I said to them, I'm not releasing the car. They can do whatever they want, and I went for my run. 10 kilometers later, I came back, they were waiting. I go for my run at 5 a.m., so they must have arrived there much earlier, because when I came out, they had parked outside. They were drinking coffee from their flasks. So I refused to give them the car. I had parked the car deliberately in a manner that even if I'm not there, no one can take it out. So they brought these big cars inside the yard, and they tried to break the house, and eventually 8 hours later they got an instruction from the bank not to break the house, but to leave. So on this particular day, I actually realized that maybe I'm in more trouble than I envisaged. I realized that I'm dealing with very unscrupulous characters. I had identified the fraud in the restructured installment sale agreement. Now I had just discovered a second fraud where they went to chambers to find an acting judge to fraudulently grant a default judgment whilst I'm sitting in court. So these were 2 very serious things. And then thirdly, they go and get the writ of execution. They come to my house at 4 o'clock in the morning. with a squad. There were at least 20 policemen, and everybody was on the phone taking instructions. They were intimidating me. They were playing tricks. I just remained calm. I went to the house. I made them fresh pots of coffee. I gave them fresh scones. Then I went to my study to work. In preparation for the default judgment hearing, I had unpacked the installment sale agreement, alphabet by alphabet. And I had at least 20 points that were violations. So I was very ready for that. I knew exactly what was in the installment sale agreement. But on that day, I realized I need to look at something much higher than that. So the first thing I did was to look for the best PI, private investigator, because I wanted to understand what exactly is happening. I found a gentleman called Mr. Henry Kruger, who came from the Brixton Murder and Robbery Squad. He was recommended as a very, very meticulous private investigator. Secondly, I started preparing papers. I realized that there's an active writ of execution. So I prepared urgent papers to apply for a stay of that writ. Secondly, I prepared papers to rescind the default judgment that was granted fraudulently. Thirdly, I decided to write to the banking ombudsman, and I explained this entire story, adding my notes for the fraudulent installment sale agreement. Then after all those papers were ready, I then wrote a letter to Standard Bank. I addressed the letter to the head of risk and forensics. I offered myself and my daughter to be tested against the fraudulent installment sale agreement. I copied the banking ombudsman again. I copied joint CEOs, Mr. Ben Kruger and Mr. Sim Shabalala. I copied the head of vehicle finance. I copied the head of the fraud department. I copied all of them. And I sent the letter and I said, there is a problem. And I demand that the bank looks at this problem. I said, I understand that the CEOs have a fiduciary duty towards the bank, but this, I can invoke negligence if the CEOs are going to neglect this fraud. I'd like this fraud to be looked at, and I'm submitting myself and my daughter to be tested whichever way. Within an hour of sending the letter to Standard Bank, I received 2 correspondence. One was from it was an electronic mail from a Mr. Joop Dekker, who said he's the head of risk and forensics. He copied the banking ombudsman, and he said he's rejecting the offer to test my daughter and I because the bank is of the view that the installment sale agreement is authentic and valid. Secondly, there was a knock on my door, and I got an urgent hand-delivered letter from a law firm, Holsteins & Associates, who said they were representing Standard Bank. And the contents of the letter was a warning or threat that I must never write to the CEOs of Standard Bank again. Anything I want to say, I must say it through the lawyers. The first confirmation for me was that as of that day, both CEOs of Standard Bank, Mr. Ben Kruger and Mr. Sim Shabalala, knew of the fraud. They were personally informed by me. Instead of attending to the fraud, they got lawyers to threaten me. Then I rushed to court to go and file the papers. I filed both applications, the one to rescind the default judgment and the urgent application for an interdict to stay the writ of execution. After that, I came back, I went to the sheriff, asked him to serve both Standard Bank and the lawyers, and then I personally walked into Standard Bank and served them the documents for both applications. Then I personally went to the attorneys and served them the papers. I told them that it's an urgent application and they have to appear in Gauteng, South Gauteng High Court the following afternoon. From there, I drove straight to Sandton Police Station and I opened a fraud case against Standard Bank with all the facts and the proof. When I got home, dead tired that evening, I had Mr. Henry Kruger, the private investigator, with two of his partners, waiting for me with reams and reams of feedback. The private investigating team brought me the worst news. First of all, they told me this is not a mistake. There's many people going through it. They've got clients who have gone through exactly the same thing. They told me this is a scam that is run by a syndicate of very, very senior people. The syndicate involves law enforcement, it involves sheriffs, auctioneers, the dealerships of exotic cars, but importantly, the heads of finance in banks. Because for these deals to be approved over and over again, it needs the head of finance to sign off. At this point, I'd like to explain how the risk process works within a bank. There's somebody who wants to buy a car, I don't know what cars cost, for 50,000 Rand. Maybe just the manager can approve that. If you're buying a Mercedes-Benz that is 800,000 Rands, it's a different quorum of the risk credit committee that approves it. But there are cars that need the full quorum of the credit committee to approve over and above the head of finance. Not only because of the cost, but because some of the cars are very dangerous. So they look at age, they look at how much do you earn, they look at do you have immovable property. You can't go and buy a car for 2, 3, 4, 5 million Rands if you don't even have a home. So they look at all of those things to see if you are stable enough to qualify for this. And there are cars that are not sold to people who are younger than a certain age. So they look at all of that scoring to qualify you. So the head of finance is very important for this level of cars because he has to put his final signature. Then they told me what has happened to my transaction exactly. This information was imperative for me to receive before going to attend agent court tomorrow. So I went to agent court. I presented everything I know. I presented how the National Credit Act has been violated. I presented the fact that I had asked for the installment sale agreement 12 times. I had all my emails and I had all the rejections. I had every piece of document. The judge was a very, very smart lady who asked me questions for 2 hours. She pierced me left, right, and center. And at the end, she said to me, I am satisfied that there's a possible alleged fraud here, and I'm going to grant the interdict to stay the writ of execution pending the rescission application to be heard. I left the court with my interdict and I came back home. I wrote a very strong letter to Standard Bank. And I still copied both CEOs. I copied every head of department, finance, fraud department, risk, forensics, and I copied the attorneys. And I said, now I know what is happening, and now I insist. This is not a matter of the courts. We are wasting courts' time and we are wasting money on legal fees. I actually said to them, if this case has to go through trial, by the time the case gets to trial, we would have bought 4 of these cars. That's how much the legal costs are going to cost. Whereas we can sit around the table and reconstruct my installment sale agreement the way it was. I pay the car off and then we part in peace. They refused, but I had my interdict to stay the writ of execution.